In this video I'm going to talk about the active cooling on a Hyundai Ioniq Electric. So as you probably know, electric vehicles don't require as much cooling as a combustion engine vehicle. Primarily that's because when you've got a fire under the bonnet with a combustion engine, they're only about 20% efficient, so a lot of that energy is being converted into heat and it's all got to be cooled, whereas an electric vehicle is about 90% efficient and there's much less heat there under the bonnet. But on electric vehicles, that slot at the bottom is usually enough for the cooling. But on vehicles like this, where there is a combustion engine vehicle with a grille, on the electric ones they make the grille solid because they don't need all that airflow through to the radiator. And on the original version of this with a 28 kilowatt hour battery, I think they had a much better front end because it was all smooth, whereas on the 38 they've gone with this more prominent grille. However, the difference here is on the 38 you have these active cooling ducts, and that's because the 38 kilowatt hour model does have a water cooled battery pack under the floor there, whereas the original 38 kilowatt hour model had just air cooling with a fan in the back and a vent under the back seat. And it's easy to understand why the 38 kilowatt hour cars require that extra cooling, because they've squeezed another 10 kilowatt hours into the same battery compartment. So on the 38 kilowatt hour model you've got airflow going into the bottom here to the radiator behind the bumper, but if it requires more airflow, i.e. more cooling, it has these two flaps here which open up to allow more airflow in. But I have never seen these open, and of course you won't, because most of the time you're sat in the car and you're never going to see them if they do open. However, I've never even seen another Ioniq on the road with these open. So in this video I'm going to show you what it looks like when these are open, because I'm able to do that with my diagnostic scanner. So I've got my scanner here and it's plugged into the onboard diagnostic port down there, and I'm just going to scan the vehicle there so I can get all the ECUs up, and then I'll be able to control the active cooling from this. And actually what I discovered is you can control each one individually and together. So obviously when the vehicle decides it needs some extra cooling, it will just open one, and if it needs more it will then open the other. So if you see an Ioniq with only one flap open, it doesn't mean one isn't working or broken. It's just obviously the car can decide how much extra cooling it requires. It's probably very difficult to see in this sunlight, but anyway, there's an ECU called active air flap, and I can go into that, and then I can go into that, and I can do an active test and manually open air flap. I need to put that down on the ground so when I press start there we go. That's what it looks like when they're open. And leaving it on test, these are just opening and shutting all the time. There's one thing quite interesting though. Obviously they've got this plastic vent inside, but they've gone to the effort of writing Ioniq EV in that one. I'm not sure whether you can see, and on this one it says AFF system, which is the active airflow or active air flap system. So they've gone to all that effort of putting writing in that plastic, which of course no one's ever going to see, because these flaps are only ever open when the vehicle's moving. There we go. That's what the active airflow system is. Many vehicles have active air flaps like this. They're usually hidden behind a grille or hidden underneath. I don't think any other vehicle has them as prominent on the front of the grille like this and as visible as they are on the Ioniq. So when the flaps are open, all it's doing quite simply is allowing more air to come through the radiator at the front of the vehicle there. And it's low speed driving when these are going to open, because when you're driving fast there's going to be enough airflow coming through the bottom there, so when it's going to be particularly hot, and maybe in the UK we don't really have hot enough conditions, but it's going to be low speed driving, high temperatures when these are going to open to allow that bit more cooling through the radiator. And what the radiator is doing is cooling down the coolant from your cooling system here, this antifreeze here, and this is basically going through your electric motor at the bottom, your charger and inverter electronics here, and on the 38 kilowatt hour it also goes round the battery pack as well. So I think that's about all I can tell you about the active flaps on the Ioniq, and I'd never seen them open before, so I thought you might find that interesting. If you have, please do click the thumbs up button, that really does help. Do subscribe to the channel, and if you want to know more about the Hyundai Ioniq Electric, I'll put a link to a playlist in the video description below, and do comment and ask questions, and I'll see you on the next video.